During the 1980s, billions of dollars of research was funneled into the idea that if we used enough energy, if we used enough force, concentrated into a small area the size of a pinprick, we could theoretically tear our page and get a glimpse of the next page to ours. We could open a door from their universe to ours. When the family, the code name for the group scientists that functioned at the head of each of their departments at CERN, were shown the initial presentation in March of 1981, many of them expressed grave concern about the ramifications of opening such a doorway. But in the beautiful name of science, the family decided to share these ideas with governments who constantly funded their research. At a meeting held in Luxembourg, the heads of state of the newly formed European Union, along with the United States and China, were shown plans for the construction of a colossal machine that would enable the opening of a doorway that could be closed at our discretion. The door would be opened and the energy levels would be the measure to prove that CERN had accomplished its task, and the door would be closed. Open, shut, simple as that. The government's leaders threw endless funding at the family, at the rest of CERN, in the hopes of understanding what kind of power lay in the universe. Think of the possible endless source of energy, faster than light travel, weaponry that could obliterate enemies using laser. The possibilities for power were truly staggering, so the public was fed one narrative: understanding the universe. And the family and governments knew the truth. Most of the scientists at CERN were kept completely in the dark after all the collider would perform its function as normal and collide particles for eager funding hunters to capitalize on. But the far more nefarious purpose would only be tested in the presence of the family and a few select scientists. I am a member of the family for my division. Obviously, the original family have all retired or died out, but there is a new, younger, more eager to prove themselves group now at the helm, and the consequences of this were and are dire. So with that established, allow me to explain what happened last Thursday. It was an ordinary day with the LHC scheduled to commit two collisions, one at 9 a.m. and the other at 6:30 p.m. Both went off magnificently, and the experiments were deemed a success. We witnessed two full collisions, and the general group of researchers were very happy with their work. Around 7 p.m., most of the team had filtered out the observation room, and the machine had been put into its usual standby mode. As the room emptied, the ID clip that I had on my wrist, which had a built-in display and vibrator, started to go off. I looked down at the display, and it said in very faint green writing, "Living Room." I knew right away that what they were going to attempt. I looked up from the badge and caught the eye of Dr. Céline Dacord, another member of the family and the head of plasma physics. She, too, had just looked up from her ID badge. We both understood and left. Living room was a large room under the main facility located in A section. The room wasn't special anyway and appeared completely normal. This was key to hiding our true intentions. If we met in a secret underground bunker instead of the regular basement, we'd arouse suspicion every time we were going to run an experiment. As Celine and I made our way from the collider to Section A, the cold Swiss air hit my face and burned as we booked it across the campus. The night was exceptionally clear, and this factor further bolstered my suspicion. They always liked doing these experiments on clear nights. We entered Section A and made our way to the main building. The doors opened up as we approached, and we made our way to the elevators across the wide expanse of the lobby with the vaulted ceilings. The RFID signal, given off by our name badges, caused the elevator doors to open before we had even pressed the button. As we stepped in, the doors shut and the elevator began to move. "I'll never get used to that," Celine said, referring to the degree of automation that the buildings displayed. We had been scheduled for a meeting in the living room, and the building knew, so all strategic lights were on, the elevators were reading where we needed to go. The miracle of networking. We exited the lift and made our way to the regular boardroom, and the door was shut, and assembled inside was the family. At the head of the table was Father, a young, rather ambitious physician named Sandra O'Reilly, designated Father, since she was in charge of giving orders to the family with respect to our clandestine experiments. The mood in the living room was never tense, but rather one of controlled excitement. The family had been attempting these tests every 6 months for the past 10 years without much success. We had gone through several fathers, from the great Dr. Bertram Berg to the lesser-known and constantly drunk Dr. Yao. Each had failed to achieve what the original family had planned. Billions were spent, but no door had yet been opened. Tonight, we try 40 tera electron volts, Father announced. Her announcement brought an immediate and total silence to the room. Family members looked from one to the other, some with feigned excitement, others with reverent concern, all with general sense of disbelief. The last 4 trials were between 10 to 12 tera electron volts, TeVs. We've never tried anything that high. We don't know if the machine can handle a test of that magnitude, protested Dr. Akava, head of the mathematical physics and chief of the department that should be certifying whether or not the 40 TeV was even a healthy thing to do. We had reviewed the possible outcomes, and even though we will have to pull twice the amount of energy out of the grid, the Swiss government have been advised and are cooperating. Father quickly retorted. Her sweet, controlled tone actually did help the situation. I looked over, and Celine had been frantically writing down some calculations on a piece of paper. After a few seconds, she shot up from her seat. Father, even if we try to reach 40 TeVs, the math doesn't support that this is possible. We can't just throw the collider to the highest setting and hope for the best. Are there any other objections that you would like noted before we begin the experiment? Father asked, completely ignoring Celine's desperate pleas. Father surveyed the room and could see that she wasn't going to be met with other objections. After all, what was the point? They were going to go ahead unheeded. Excellent, then we shall proceed. Meet in the control room at 2200 hours, Father announced as the family got up from the table and left the living room. No one said a word. We left in complete silence, made our way into the lift, and exited the building into the cold Swiss night. If the machine couldn't handle the electron voltage, it could become structurally unstable and break apart, but being buried underground, preventing this from being a catastrophe. There wouldn't be loss of life, but the LHC would be rendered useless and billions of dollars worth of funding would be destroyed. On the other hand, if the experiment was successful and the door opened, we could close something functioning. Could we close something functioning of 40 TeV? Our math has supported 10 TeVs, 20 TeVs, and even 30 TeVs, but no one had dared go above that. However, this is where our role as scientists ended and our regrettable role of secret experimenter began. All we could do was say yes. At 2200 hours, with the family assembled in the control room and the handful of select CERN employees who understood the true nature of the experiment milling around, we commenced our grand try. Begin was the only order that Father issued. The family members at the control entered the required programming to begin the collider, and so our fateful experiment began. Release the first particle sample, came the command. A few seconds later, the sound of gas entering the collider could be heard. The gas started its 20-plus mile journey around the collider, gaining more and more speed. Release the second particle sample. Another sound of whooshing gas entered the tube and traveling into the opposite direction as the first. Both gained speed, traveling faster and faster, approaching the speed of light. Like two runners running around a circular track in opposite directions, not touching one another. Father, we are approaching 30 TeVs, one of the commanders warned. Excellent. Increase the energy to 35 TeVs within the next 3 minutes. Father's commands once again brought grave concern. If anything was going to happen, it was going to happen now. Increasing to 35 TeV came the announcement over the intercom system. We all continued to look at one another, the concern growing graver and graver. Achieving 38 TeV, another announcement. But nothing. No explosion, no catastrophic failure, nothing. In theory, 40 was possible, but never advisable. However, 38, no specific structural damage signs were noted. Nothing. 40 TeV achieved. We looked at one another in astonishment. We had achieved what we thought was impossible. 40 TeV of energy was pushing the particles through the collider, and we were sustaining it. As the two particle clouds whizzed past each other, our first indication that something different was going to happen started to occur. There was a sudden spike in the temperature of the room. We could feel that it had gone warmer, and the first reaction was one of panic. "Shut the machine down," came the first exclamation from a family member. "The machine is heating up. Explosion could be imminent," she continued. "Wait," exclaimed Father, her eyes glowing with the reflection of the computer screen in front of her. "Look at the core temperature readout. They haven't changed. They're perfectly normal." We each looked at the closest computer screen we could find, all of them showing that everything was going well except for the fact that the thermostat in the room now read 35 degrees Celsius. Then we started out at the pleasant 20. When we started out at the pleasant 20 Celsius. Could this be it? "Commence the collision sequence," Father barked the order in the microphone near the console. "Control. Collision in 4, 3, 2. The methodical voice announced over the intercom, 1. An ethereal, blinding light consumed the room. I had never experienced anything like this before. The temperature dropped back to 20 degrees and the light was overpowering us. We couldn't see our own hands in front of our faces. Suddenly there was a blood-curdling scream like someone being horribly beaten, followed by complete and total silence in the darkness. "Is everyone okay?" Celine was shouting from her side of the room. "I'm fine," I called back. "Sound off. Mantul code. FAM 0113. D'accord. Code Farm 0115. Chung, Code Farm 0114. The family members present started to scream out their names and code designations as our eyes adjusted to the total darkness that had encompassed the room. With the sound of a bang, the emergency red lighting bathed the room in a lambent glow. We could make out shadows, but no distinguishing features. By this time, approximately 2 minutes after our encounter with the white light, we still had not heard Father sound off. "Where is Father?" Dr. Chung called out. We all turned to the seat that Father sat in and could see a lump on the chair, but no sign of her. I entered the panel code to open the emergency exit and made my way through the escape corridor to the lighting box at the end of the hall. I turned the breaker and the normal lighting filled the control room again. Panic struck as Father's well-being. I turned and ran back into the control room. All of my fellow scientists were in complete and total awe. Nothing in the room was out of place, and the temperature had returned to normal. However, sitting in Father's chair was a pile of her effects. Celine ran up to the chair Father once filled and looked down with a gasp. "She's gone. All of her things are here. Her jewelry, her clothes, her tamp, everything." Where Father sat now rested her physical possessions. She had vanished into the thin air. And we have also been told that starting November 20th, they are going to ramp up CERN to 1,000 TeVs. I'll leave a link below for you for this article.